Right, so I'm going to continue with this bespoke jacket today. I fitted the client yesterday, everything's going super lacquer. There's a couple of alterations that I won't really bore you with, but the most important one is that we're shifting this break line down. It is actually going to come a little bit down, and this is why I didn't pad stitch this portion, so that now I don't have to get all that expensive therapy for unpicking all of this. And like I said, usually I would leave the extra layer of horsehair and the stomach beyond the break line in case you have to move it up. I just knew for this client that moving it up was really not going to happen, but that moving it down, there was a chance for that. So that is what's happening. Just moving this down a little bit. And of course now there will probably be a little bit of unpicking, but that's just life. I'm just redoing my break line there. How I do, during the fitting, I find it quite tough to get this measurement exactly right, or after fitting when I now come to my adjustments. So what I do at the fitting, I always have this waistline marked, and that helps me to close the jacket nicely. And then I know from my waistline measuring up where is my break line. I don't know if I actually want to put it at 11, to be honest. No, let's leave it at like that. And okay, so just put those pins through. So you see here I am going to have to unpick just a little bit, but at least not nearly as much as I would have had to unpick. If I've not left that portion there. So let me take this out. Okay. So let's see, just unpicking these pad stitches. Now we do need the horsehair and the demand to be about a centimeter back from the break line. So I'm going to make sure it's completely back. So what I'm going to do now is, here we go. Let's open this up. Okay. So step one will be cut the dermet and the horsehair one time on that break line. I'm going to squeeze up like this. Actually, I just want to redraw this break line so that I have it quite nice and accurate for when I put it onto my suit, put it onto the jacket. I'm just going to cut that a centimeter, 3/4 centimeters down. Okay, there we go. And this, I don't really want it exactly on the break line, so I'm just going to trim that maybe like 3/4. What am I talking about? Like, 1/4 centimeter back. Just so that it doesn't interfere with the roll of my break line. There we go. Okay. Alright, from there, nothing to it. We're just going to pad stitch the remainder of this. And then this chest piece is going to be done and ready to attach. Oh, that's a line. Not quite done, not quite ready to attach. So here, because everything is padded more or less down, I'm not going to worry about going up and down. I'm just going to go perpendicular to the, or parallel to the break line. Here I'm going over the dermet, kind of like whip stitching it down. Really, we don't actually need more than that, but I just don't want that horsehair to be flapping around too much. So I am going to come back on this stitch. What I forgot that I need to do is to mark out the pocket on here, because I'm going to prepare this a little bit beforehand to accommodate the pocket, which is this trick I learned in Germany that has really changed my life. Oh, it's been so easy to do pockets since I learned this one. So I will share that with you. Your mind will be blown. You will be saving so much money on therapy. So nothing too exciting, when if these stitches don't, line up so perfectly or get a bit untidy, it's really not a drama. At the end of the day, all that needs to happen is these three layers need to join. Where am I now? I'm just wanting to get to the end before I knot off. I'm being extra. Right. Grab my pattern, which has now been very interestingly cut up because I'm getting my lining correct. But I can just line up my waist and my dart. It's around there. So my pocket is obviously over this portion of the dart. So I'm just going to do this. Get rid of that. So here's my pocket. I'm going to straighten it up. Here's my pocket. I know my pocket comes about 1.5 centimeters in front here. So I'm going to do, you know how much of a cowboy I am. I'm going to do 4 centimeters. And let's do 3 centimeters other side of the pocket. Here we are. Right, let's find fabric that's going to work for us. So this is one of my fitting garments. I was obviously fitting a shirt at this time. The fabric you use is not such an important consideration. Just don't use anything that's too thick or too thin. This, I would say, is really on the thinner side of what I would like. I like to do a cotton, and because I use the cotton as a fitting sample, I have a lot of that lying around. So I like to then reuse that in this back of the pocket. So I'm just lining this up, making sure these pieces join so that I can just cut this once. I don't really feel like doing too much extra work. Bespoke is already such a job. So you've got to find ways to save time where you can. And this is definitely one of them, to prepare the horsehair like this for putting in the pocket. Okay, so this portion is what's going to touch the fabric. I want this to be as flat as possible. So at the back of that, I'm going to have my piece of cotton. And I'm going to join this in the same way that I put the puffs in here. Just going to zigzag, trim, zigzag, and then put a piece of fusing over the stitches. So I'm going to head off to the machine and do that. And then our chest pieces will be ready to attach onto the suit, onto the jacket front. I'm going to check my measurements here. 5.5, 525. I feel like this is kind of warped a little bit. Just going to always be checking this off. Yeah. So then we pop over to the machine, sort that out. So you can see here, I started by stitching a little bit back from the edge. I was stitching on the side, stitching a little bit back from the edge, went around, then stitched over the edge, around, flipped it this side, trimmed off the excess, and then stitched over the edge of that cotton. And now on this side that's going to be facing the fabric, I'm just going to put some fusing over there so that my stitches don't go directly onto the fabric. Easy peasy, and there is our chest piece done and ready. All right, so I did some alterations on the front panel where it connects to the side panel, which I'm not really going to bore you with. But I did all my changes that needed to be changed. I altered the shoulder, brought in a little bit, etc., etc. Now what I'm doing is changing the break line. And you see here, I've just gone around and kind of remarked everything. Remarked the break line. I've just remarked this center front to make sure it's nice and crisp. Because things move around. And of course remarked where the buttons are going to go, because now I've got a new break line. So I'm just going to quickly tack that up, do these tailor tacks. Some people call it mark stitching. Whatever is going to work for you. I'm just going to do that up quickly so that I've got my new break line marked. Now you will see on the portion of the horsehair or the canvas that's lying over here. So I just learned recently this is called lap hair. It's not actually called horsehair. We just don't have horsehair in South Africa. I've never seen it, and I've shopped all over the show. Maybe I just don't shop in the right shops. I don't know. But next time I'm overseas, I'll make sure to buy a nice piece and start working on that. Anyway, so you'll see there. Honestly, I don't know where I made my error, what error I did, but somehow my horsehair and the domette stopped, maybe like 2.5 centimeters back from the break line. And I debated a lot whether that's really a problem, and eventually decided just to, in a way, patch that by putting that little piece of lap hair there. Lap hair? Horsehair? What? I'll look it up again. Yeah, just to patch that little piece there so that it comes to the break line. I just feel it's important to not be so far back from the break line. I felt 2.5 centimeters was just going to be too far back. So I just patched that little piece there, and you can just stop judging me. I don't know where that mistake happened. This is the consequence of, I think doing it for the camera. All of a sudden, I'm finding like really weird mistakes happening. I think it's just because I'm, more focused on chatting and explaining than I am actually doing the job. And amongst that, I'm also doing 100 other things running the business. So, anyways, that's how it goes. Always just got to make a plan, and I made that plan. So here I'm just going to finish this up, and then last thing I'm going to do here is actually cut out. You see what I've done here? I just cut all the way to the edge of the fabric, and I leave quite a bit extra here, so that if I do need to adjust here at the center front, it's going to be quite a simple adjustment. Also, it's tradition to keep this portion with the selvage, especially if it's an expensive fabric, to, in a way, demonstrate to the client that you are, in fact, using that fabric that he agreed on. You haven't swapped it out for some plastic nonsense. And those are the two reasons: to allow an adjustment and to just show the client what's happening, and maybe number 3 just because it's tradition we do that. But now, of course, I'm moving on to the final fitting. So now I actually want to do this front edge. So usually you'll mark stitch this front edge in some way. I really don't like doing the tailor's tacks there. I just find it really untidy. So I rather, as you see here, do just a running stitch along. That's going to be now the final shape of my garment. So from there, I'm just going to go around and mark my seam allowance. So now, one other thing you'll see, I put fusing wherever there is a join, and this is because this is a very fine fabric, and I'm just a little bit paranoid about the stitching causing me a bit of a drama. Now here where I changed the pattern, I moved the break line a little bit further back, so I just want to make sure that this is quite a nice curve, because the original pattern would have curved down to where the break line originally was and then gone straight. So I just want to kind of extend that curve a little bit further down. Here, of course, I want this to be straight as a very straight thing. Now you can see on the selvage, it's not super straight, but that is because of all these adjustments we've been making. So if we, you see, that is more or less straight. Because obviously this we've been now putting the dots, ironing it around, doing all these things. Here also, usually past the bottom button, it's maybe 2 centimeters and then the curve starts. So see, here's the original curve when the button was a little bit lower. Now I'm just going to make that button a little bit higher. So my curve needs to start a little bit higher up, and I should not get distracted by the wrong thing. And mark that original. Let me actually just take this out, to be honest. That is going to confuse me. There we go. And then here, let's see, here's my pattern piece. So here's where the facing is going to stop. And I want to be maybe centimeter, centimeter and a half, maybe 2 centimeters just ahead of that. I want to move out to my full 5 centimeter turn up for the hem. So I've got half 1.5. Here I'm using 1.5 just because it's going to give me a little bit of extra wiggle room in case I need it. Hopefully I will not need it. Hopefully there will be no more insane mistakes. But I do like to be cautious and have a little bit of extra just for in case. Okay, so that's looking good. It's looking fine. So I'm just going to cut this out quickly. If I could find my scissors. Now here I am including a little bit of this selvage in the seam allowance. No one's really going to die, because of course the stitch line is 1.5 centimeters back from that. So okay, just this little edge. All right, so just what I want to do quickly is transfer these buttons. So I'm just going to put some fusing behind the buttonholes. I know I'm extra. You can see I've already fused here behind the chest pocket there. I'm going to put the chest pocket. I just put a little bit of fusing there just for some extra strength. This I don't really need anymore. Okay, so Just going to transfer those buttons. I can put some fusing there. Then I'm going to open up and I'm going to fuse. I'm going to fuse behind the buttons, and then I'm just going to fuse this portion. I just feel it gives me like a nice strong lapel. It's not too flappy about. I don't think you need to really see all of that. Just going to do that, and then we're going to start joining the canvas to the jacket. Right, so ironing is done, and you'll see I don't stretch out my chest here. The chest is formed with the dart there. Here I'll shrink like just a little fraction. Of course, because of this fusing, it's not really possible. But you can see there is the chest lying there. And my horsehair, when I iron, let's make sure to iron around here like this. I lift that portion up and I iron it like that so that we can really see there the chest is formed there. So now we've got that all ready, all the fusing is in place. I can now join my fabric to the horsehair. So here I'm just marking the center button here on the outside, so I can know more or less where I want that to be. It's not the most accurate mark because the fusing is covering the final mark. But anyway, so I'm just checking here to see, it's all lining up more or less. So let's see, I'm going to put a pin through and then check on the back, is that where it's supposed to be? And it's just a little bit too back. I'll bring it a bit forward. Yep, that's perfect. So now my next pin I'm going to put here where the break line and the center front meet, which is exactly right. Then I'm going to go from there down the center front, checking that this pin is indeed coming onto the center front. Yep, perfect. Right, so you can grab it by the shoulder up here and at the bottom. Just kind of pull it like this. This will sort of shake it into the position it wants to be, or that you want it to be. So that's all working out fine. I'm going to check my dart. Is that actually, yeah, where my dart is? Perfect. And now there's been quite a few adjustments here on the shoulder. And of course here, we put the puff and all of that. But I can check this line here, which, okay, this one is now much forward than the original. And actually I cut a centimeter from the original. Although, come to think of it, my stitch line from there would have been 1.5. I cut half. So, yeah, I mean, this is a little bit further over, but it is more or less where I want it. Like, I can see where that stitch line and the side seam is ending there. So it's more or less fine. Usually here you'll find, because of all the manipulations, it's gone a bit wonky. But our break line and our center front just match that. And, yeah, like I start on a button here. And then I'm just going to check my pocket is actually where I want it to be, which is in the middle of this fabric. Fantastic. It's a little bit high, but yeah, there's my horsehair there. Yeah, that's just diffusing there. Yeah, perfect. So one thing that I find is that as I'm joining this, it tends to, this portion kind of tends to move. So I'm going to straighten it out as much as I can. Now this grain here has been a little bit distorted because of the dart. So I'm going to come to the side seam here, and I'm just going to pull it up, maybe like not even a centimeter, just so that across here, our grain line is as straight as can be. Maybe even to 3/4 centimeter, but not more than that. Just ends up straightening up everything. No, see there, there you go. Okay. So there's lots of different ways to do this. Some people use a form. Obviously, this is now tiny. A much bigger form underneath, and then stitch over it like that. I like to do everything on the flat, or as much on the flat as I can. And I'll use the form to create the shape in a negative way. Show you what I mean now. I'm going to put the form actually at the back here, like this. You see that will then flatten this portion for me. The reason I like doing this is because it's curving the fabric this way, and that means that it's actually, when it curves back this way, it's going to be quite tight. So that if we're moving our arm forward like this is not all of a sudden going to be creating a bubble. I feel if we stitch it over a form like that, and then our arm moves forward, it's going to create excess here. Just how I feel emotionally, and also I'm a follower of Reza, International School of Tailoring. Wow, what a phenomenal series! So yeah, I'm going to start here at the neck point, and I'm going to be at least 4 centimeters from the edge. That's because my seam allowance is 2 centimeters, and I still need enough for the seam allowance to flip back. So I'm going to start around here, and it's a bit of a challenge, or a very fine line between too tight and too loose. And this fabric is very, very thin, so very easy to overstretch. So let me make sure you can see this fine. So getting that piece up there. And as I'm going, just kind of moving the fabric with my hands to make sure it's quite taut on the canvas. I'm going to come to the break line. I'm not going to go past the break line. I just want one more pin here in the middle of the break line. Perfect. You can go. I'm going to follow the break line down. So personally, for the second fitting, I just do 3 quick lines. See, I'm just moving this around so that there's always a flat portion here for me to work on. Just to keep these 2 layers together. I do line them up, but I'm not too precious about it if it's maybe 1 or 2 centimeters skew. But obviously now this is a permanent job. So here I'm going to use maybe 4 or 5 lines to join these 2, and I'm going to make sure that we're really lining up very nicely. I'm just going to come just to in front of the center front here, and then I'm just going to follow that down. Okay, so following the center front down. I don't want to now overstretch this, because especially if I overstretch my fabric going down, this horsehair is very, very fine, and it doesn't have a lot of structure in that direction, so it will end up kind of scrunching my horsehair up. So I'm just going to continue down there, just making sure that the layers are taut. There's no excess, just flapping about. Then here, now when I do the second fitting, I go a little bit of a curve. And here I'll do the same. I just won't curve so much because I've got more lines coming. So I'll maybe stop around here. I don't really have too many exact rules because every garment is unique. So I have to really work with that one and that client and figure out what's going to be the best for them. Let's see. So after every single line, just take it top and bottom, and just give it a bit of a pull. It will just kind of release any weird tension that you put in anywhere. Now I'm going to go another one in front of the dart, far enough that I don't interact with the pocket. Get another thread so I can have one long line. So this I'm also going to do in two stages. I do it like this, and I then stretch it over the mannequin and just leave it for a day. And I'll come back tomorrow and carry on. Let's keep it like this. So again here, just making sure this is, and here especially I'll make it quite tight because this is where your arm's going to move forward. So I want to make sure this portion does not have any excess. Obviously, waxing these threads would be very lacquer. Sure. Save me some therapy. Oh my gosh, what is even happening in this life? This is the one disadvantage of using the old busted threads because they are a little bit ratty. So much easier to knot. But the fact that we're using them is keeping them out of the ocean, away from choking dolphins. So may as well. So yeah, I just do this kind of in a bit of a curve. Make sure that this portion here is nice and tight. Yeah, this portion over the chest, I just like to keep it nice and tight. Then here, once we get past the break line and towards the start, I don't want to make it tight this way because then the whole jacket's going to flip out like that. So here, obviously I do want it taut this way, but not tight. So here I'm mainly focusing on the fall of the fabric, that it's going to fall with gravity in this direction. And yeah, I just want to be in front of my pocket. And here I want to start before the 5 centimeter turn up. And again, just pulling it like this, just to kind of release any weird tension. Now, here what I'm going to do, a little bit controversial. I'm just going to mark where my seam is here, so that I can bring it back here. I'm going to just pin on the close side of this dart, flip it up, and I'm going to join this dart to the horsehair. And just grab, okay, no knots. I know I shouldn't be threading a thread this long, but sometimes other Benjamin just does whatever he wants. So yeah, using a herringbone, which as we know has a bit of movement to it. Just going to stitch the dart to the canvas. So there's nothing too exciting about it. Just stitching and stitching. There I am. Oh, I guess I threaded this still on. I don't usually do that. Oh well. Okay, there we go. So that is joined. I'm going to put this back where I had it. And again, bit of a pull. So now I'm going to put my form here on the top, and you'll see here this bit of excess. You see I can just shift it that way, and that becomes flat there. So I'm going to now do a line behind the dot. I'm going to keep this flat a little bit. And then just shift it this way so that I can come in not quite a bow. This one is more straight. Sometimes you just have to move this thing around until I get a nice straight section. So this one's coming behind the dot. If you put it here at the top of the dot, that will flatten out there. So now here, I'm just going to do a knot off here. I don't really need to come further down. Obviously my canvas continues. Canvas continues to here. So, you know, I will secure that knot, but this, I don't really need to come further down because this portion is just flat. There's no real shape there. Okay, then I'm going to do, oh, almost forgot. Just shake it out, stretch it out. Same story, lifting up here, getting that portion flat. Now here again, I need to leave enough space for the seam allowance because I need to stitch the sleeve there completely separate from the horsehair. So here I'm going to follow the sleeve, keep this moving. You can put anything behind there. A lot of people put a thread like this. Just put that behind there. Same story. So this one I'm going to bring just to the side seam. Just going to do it twice over there so that it doesn't pull funny. And then I'm going to come down. I can feel here where is my horsehair going. Again, I want to knot off here on top of the pocket. But now this one, I'll just continue underneath the pocket to close that last bit. So here I'll just feel there's my horsehair there. So now some people for this one, they actually shift this a little bit forward. They create a little bit of an excess there. Because like I was saying, we don't want the jacket shot curl up like that. We actually want it to curve inwards. But I really don't see the point because this piece of horsehair isn't caught onto anything. We catch it down here at the bottom. But here, nothing. So I really don't see what is the point of creating any excess there. Right. And then, very, very last one. Give it a bit of a stretch. You see this bubble here? I'm gonna shift it to the front so that this portion is flat. Now here, I did an alteration to my armhole. It was too high, so I brought a centimeter down. See, I didn't cut this because if I cut there, it's going to start unraveling. So just leave it like that. Once I finish sewing this, I'll cut the rest. And also here, I first want to attach the back before I finish that curve there. So I just kind of stopped there randomly in the middle of nowhere. It's just how I roll, people. So I'm going to do this one. And this will just join up to this one. Like I said, I don't really have a consistent method here. I kind of just go with what the garment requires of me. So I like to have one in the front, back in front of the dart, and then one on the side. This one, I brought one in here just because this guy has quite a prominent chest, so I really need to get the shape to fix. I'm going to show you just so that I can do my ironing and all of that in peace without this flapping about. So it's a low spiel. Just going to move this. So here I'm just doing a bit of a whip stitch just to keep this excess down out of the way. Also so that I can now do all the ironing, lock these two pieces together. Without this now getting in the way. So what I'm going to do is give this an iron and then pin it to the mannequin. So I'm going to show you all of that in just a moment. This is just to keep that extra seam allowance caught in there. Right. So to check that we've got these layers together, I'm going to hold it here at the neck, shake this around a little bit, and make sure these layers are working as one. And I can also kind of squeeze it like this, and it will quickly, I'll find a bump or a lump somewhere where I haven't smoothly joined these two. But this looks totally fine. I don't see there being any excess or any strange pulling anywhere. But this is how you can do. You can just kind of run your hands over it like this, and you'll very quickly find a bump if you haven't joined these two correctly. So from there, I'm going to give it an iron and then put it on the mannequin. Now with the ironing, we really don't want to overdo it because we don't want to see any of the stitching or those bumps we have now put the puff or anything like that. We don't want to see any of that shining through, especially on this fabric. This is a very fine fabric. So you really got to be quite gentle. Now, of course, this portion here, this is completely flat. So I'm just ironing that on the flat. Here we've got shape in the hip. So you see I'm just shifting that out of the way, shifting it to this side so that I can iron that portion flat. But here, not too much of a drama. But you know, under here, there's that stitching where we put the extra fabric for the pocket. So I don't want to over iron here and have that stitching shine through. Now here we're going to get some shape going. So here I'm going to use my form and put it underneath here and give me that shape. And I'm just going to gently, with quite a bit of steam, just go around, kind of iron these two layers together. And this portion I do over a form. I found working on the flat here not to be as easy, and also my iron tends to catch these threads. And there's nothing really too exciting about this. We're just going to move over this piece. Guess if I had a larger form, I could do larger sections. But this totally works for me. And I just go piece by piece over the whole, here it is. Just give it a nice little iron. And that's basically that. So you can see here I haven't trimmed down anything. I'm just going to leave it exactly like this. I'm going to, in a way, stretch it over the mannequin and then just leave it till tomorrow. If you don't have a mannequin, I would say make yourself a form like this, just much bigger, and then you'll stretch it over the form. I just like to do that. I feel it really lets the two layers settle in together like a married couple. They need some time to get to know each other. And then tomorrow I'll do the pockets and the lapel. Very, very exciting times. Just always moving any excess out the way so that I'll be ironing more or less flat, as flat as this curve is allowing me. And you'll also see here quite easily if you've put a crease or something where it shouldn't be, it will really show up. That I'm very happy with. And then from there to the mannequin. Ironing done, I now want to, in a way, stretch this a little bit over the mannequin. So I'm going from the shoulder straight out. Just going to put a pin down there. Then here in the center, or breakline, just going to put a pin or two. You see this one? Checking that out. So I can pin these two one time. There's another one here somewhere. Is there not? How may not be one there? I must have moved it. Okay. There we go. And just stretching it around the back. And you see, just stretching that over the form. So like I said, if you don't have a form, especially one that you can pin like this, then do a very large, the egg, that shape, do that. Because I do find that this really helps the layers to work together. Yeah, there you go, very nice. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this till tomorrow. Tomorrow we carry on with the lapel.